We get asked all the time why we picked a bus to convert over every other option, and so today I'm going to give you 9 reasons why this is the best option for us over everything else. Welcome back to another bus chat. I'm really excited for today's video because we're going to talk about all of the reasons we picked a bus to convert rather than picking something different. We could have just as easily got a 4-wheel drive or converted Sam's ute. We could have got a caravan or a motorhome which is already finished and go straight on our trip straight away. We could have built a tiny home from scratch on a trailer and then been able to tow it. I'm sure there's even more options that I can't think of from the top of my head. We could have picked a different bus, maybe a smaller bus or even a van. So there's so many different options to take when you want to do the big lap of Australia, but we picked a bus and we picked it for a few very important reasons, which I'm excited to share with you today. The first big reason is that we have a lot of flexibility with the design. We can design this bus to be exactly as we want. We can have the rooms that we want. It's big enough to have a bathroom as well as a bedroom, a huge kitchen and a living room, and that's something that's super important to us. I'll make another video in the future going over specifically why we picked this bus over any other type of bus, but headroom is definitely a huge one for us, and our bus is 1.98 meters tall, something like that, and it's 12.5 meters long. It's big enough that we're able to put in our whole home onto this and not have to sacrifice on space or things that we really want in here, and it's also tall enough so that Sam doesn't have to bend his head. So that headspace and that space in general is the second reason why we picked a bus over something like a van or a 4-wheel drive. We don't want to have to be in one room or in a cramped space, especially because we're taking our animals on the road with us. So we want to be able to all move freely around here and not feel like we are on top of each other. There is most likely going to be days that are far too hot, places that are far too remote, or even places that are too wet for us to go outside, out in nature, and so we might be forced onto our bus for long periods of time. We want to ensure that the trip is as comfortable as it can be, and we actually want to use this as our home in the future, so we've thought ahead so that we're not having to spend more money, more time, more resources when we can build the perfect home straight away. It seems like all my points are kind of flowing onto each other. As I mentioned, we are going to be traveling with pets, and building onto a bus is going to allow us to add in these custom features for our pets, like having little places where our cat can escape the dogs and have a bit of privacy and quiet. Places where we can keep her cat litter without making any smell or mess. Places where we can feed our dogs or have them underneath our bed so that they can sleep comfortably at night. So these are all considerations that we've had the flexibility to do because we haven't bought a pre-made caravan or motorhome that doesn't have those features to begin with. We are able to design our space so that we have our pets in mind. I'm telling you, all my points are flowing on from each other. It seems like past me has written them as single points while future me, present me I mean, right now is just merging them all together. But when we come off our big lap of Australia, once we decide that we're ready to settle down onto our permanent homestead, we want to have the bus as our permanent home. Of course, I can see us in the future expanding it, whether it's out or up, but right now we're building it in a way where it will allow us to move on to whatever block of land, whether it has a house or not, and be able to live really comfortably and really settled straight away. So by having a living space, a kitchen, a bathroom and our bedroom, and even the upstairs like deck space is going to allow us to really be able to settle in and then expand in our own time when we're ready. Something that I think a 4-wheel drive or a van really wouldn't have allowed us to do. A caravan or a motorhome, even a tiny home, yes, but not quite. Now, I know I didn't mention a tiny house in that list just then, because a tiny house does have that same ability to be able to live in afterwards and also to have all that space. I mean, some tiny houses have ceilings that go way beyond our ceiling in the bus. I think the maximum limit for height in Australia for vehicles is 4 point something meters, which is massive. And a tiny house was definitely something that we had considered, but the limitation with a tiny house is, one, you're having to build the house and all of its structural capabilities from the ground up. Something like a bus, you already have the framework there and then you're building within it. The other thing with a tiny house though is that to move a tiny house, you need a car that's strong enough to tow a house that is heavy. And so we would have to not only invest our money in a tiny house, but also the vehicle and the trailer to be able to carry it around on the roads. So once we started to look into the cost of actually making that happen, it really blew out the budget and was something we couldn't afford. While a bus would mean that we could start straight away, we could build out in winter time when it's raining and already have a roof over our head, and all of the waterproofing has essentially been done other than a few leaks in the windows, while a tiny house just added that extra pressure as well as the cost. And cost is a big one. I mean, one of the main reasons we didn't go with a pre-made caravan or even a motorhome is because the cost on those, and especially a large enough one that would comfortably suit Sam and I as well as our pets, is just, it's not something we want to invest our money in. And even still, the cost of those is a premium and also won't have the features that we want. So then we would have to pay even more to include those things into it. So cost is a huge factor into why we went with what we went. Eventually, we do hope to convert a four-wheel drive and have like a four-wheel drive trip, but we figured that by converting a bus first, we could show it off on our YouTube channel and be able to connect our business to our bus as well, so that we can move towards the four-wheel drive in the future while still having a home at the end of the day. If we had converted a four-wheel drive first, we would essentially go into debt, or we would spend all our money without a home in the end, and then go back to the stage of having to rent at the end of the trip and then build a home again. So by building the bus first, going on this initial trip, and then working towards the four-wheel drive while comfortably living in a home, we're kind of thinking ahead and thinking smarter instead of working harder. I think one of the main reasons we also wanted to build or convert a bus as opposed to one of the other options like just buying a pre-made caravan or motorhome, which was one of the first questions my mum and a few of my friends asked, is why wouldn't you just get a caravan? And I think taking on the challenge of building our own home and just learning and experiencing all that we've had so far and all that we are still yet to learn with finishing off the conversion, I think is so much more valuable than what we would have got if we got something that was pre-made. So it's not just about the extra space or the custom features and the flexibility and design that we get with the bus conversion, it's also the overall adventure of actually building a home inside of a bus. It's that pride in, well, I don't think pride's the right word. It's that, you know, I like the feeling of going out and being like, yeah, I'm converting a bus with my partner. Like, we're going to live in a bus and travel Australia. That feels so much more rewarding to me than we're going on a caravan trip around Australia. I mean, for some people that's enough. For me, it personally isn't. Like, the whole journey of building and then traveling in the bus is all part of why we wanted to do it. And to go with that, knowing exactly how it's built means that we can repair it more easily. A lot of the time people get into RVs and motorhomes and then they're not able to repair things when they inevitably go wrong, especially if they've gone for a cheaper option. While this bus, every single part of it has been built by us. We know how it's been joined. We know what's been used to put things together. We will be able to feel as things change or things go wrong and problem solve them with what we think would work best. And the reason we picked our bus in particular, and I will go into it a little bit more in a future video, is because of its engine. We have a bus that has a Dennings engine, which is a really common engine in trucks and buses here in the area and also in Australia in general. So it means that mechanics have a really sound knowledge of the engine and all of the mechanics that go into this bus. So if we get into trouble along our route, we'll actually be able to easily, well, I hope, I mean, I'm talking hypothetically, But hopefully we'll be able to fix our bus quite easily, and it's an engine that is apparently quite easy to work on yourself. So as we learn the skills and watch on other people doing it, we'll be able to gain the skills to be able to do it ourselves self-sufficiently further into our trip in more remote areas that might not have mechanics, and then be able to also work on our bus in the future. Now, I have a huge desire to eventually convert this bus into vegetable oil. So instead of using diesel, it would run on old vegetable oil that we can easily get from fish and chip shops or McDonald's. That's a huge dream of mine, and I've seen a few people in Australia do this, but it comes with a lot of research and a lot of, oh, if this goes wrong, what are we going to do? So that might be for a future trip, not this one, but if you guys have any information on that, feel free to let me know, because that's definitely a huge desire for this bus. I want it to be as sustainable as possible. And that's a wrap on this video. Those are the reasons that we picked a bus to convert instead of going for all the other options. That's not to say we won't convert any other vehicle in the future, but for right now, we know this is the perfect home for us and the perfect vessel to take us on our trip. I'll see you guys next time. That was a bit cheesy, wasn't it? Bye guys.